I want to go even deeper in our experiences of really battling addiction, because I used to be the type to, like, right before work, like I would be a little high, like I would take some shots in the bar, like behind the bar, you know what I mean, to like take the edge off.
I went like deep into the partying and the drugs, and especially like selling drugs. If you're selling drugs, like, people want to be around you. There were some hard lessons learned over the years, but through that, it allowed me to understand myself at a much deeper level, because I had seen the darkness and I had essentially been the darkness, and to go through that and come out the other end gave me a unique view of the world. So I was like 7 months sober. I got arrested for the official charges aiding and abetting the transportation of illegal aliens for financial gain.
What?
Yeah.
That's for sure gonna be the intro. Welcome back to another episode on the podcast. Thank you for joining me on today's show. I will be sharing the floor with a guest today. Today I have with me an investor and a trader, an entrepreneur. He's a host of his own podcast, The Comeback Journey, where he invites various people to share what they've been through and where they are now and where they want to go to in life. Please welcome Mr. Nick Lowry. Welcome, brother.
Thanks for having me, man. I'm excited.
Well, thank you for sharing the floor with me, man. So,
It's my pleasure.
I wanted to kind of just lay out some backstory of why we kind of both started our podcast, because as you know, hosts of our own shows, I feel as though the audience or the listeners would get some key takeaways from this whole story that we're trying to lay out for them. You wanna start us off, brother?
Yeah. So so I started my podcast in 2019, like September, October 2019. And my reasoning behind it was, I had just, well, at the time I felt like I was in a very open and forward moving space in life, and I felt like my experiences could have a positive impact on people's lives. And so, the first episode that I did was just me talking about my life and kind of some of the things that I've been through and where I was at now in that moment, and where I wanted to go. And it was just a very simple flow. And then I just started asking whoever I knew, and people who I knew, and people that they knew, and just started talking to people. And it was a beautiful thing, because I think that a big part of the way that humans interpret the world is through story form. And so having people talk to or talk about the things that they've been through in a way that kind of flows as a story, like, it, at least for me, that resonates very deeply. And so I figured it may resonate with other people very deeply. And when I started the podcast, I was about 2.5 years sober. And so I had, spent quite a long time in a very self-destructive path, and then got myself out of it, made the decision to live a, better life. And I felt like at that point in 2019, I was in a position where I was solidified enough to devote myself to something more than just survival. And it just kind of evolved from there. And I think I've got 60 something episodes. And it's been a while since I've done one. I, kind of went through an extended dark night of the soul period. where I didn't feel like it was I was in the right space to continue with it at the time. But we're bringing it back full circle. So it's been a beautiful journey, man.
Comeback journey.
The comeback journey.
That's beautiful, man. And kind of want to highlight on something you mentioned. It's always those dark moments in our life where we're going through something to where we feel as though there's gems out of this. There's value out of this. And it's crazy because it's kind of like an act of surrendering almost to what needs to happen. Like you don't really know what's happening, but you just know this needs to happen. And I wanted to ask you, man, like when you were going through, the problems with addiction and all these other things going on in your life, did you feel as though that you kind of wanted to use yourself as a vessel to like help others when you were starting this podcast?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that was probably the primary motivation. And there's always we're always battling our ego in the sense, so it's like part of me was like, oh yeah, like, I could start this podcast and like I can, have more eyes on me in a sense. But the other side of that is that the more eyes that are on me, the more value I can provide to people. And so they kind of intermingle. But yeah, I really felt like I had taken an unorthodox, maybe not unorthodox, but like the path less traveled for sobriety and kind of getting myself out of active addiction. And so I just wanted to, share that, and, hopefully it would resonate with people, and then bring other people on and have them tell their stories, because everyone has a story. Everybody has such unique experiences, and you don't know who that's going to land with. You don't know who's going to resonate with that. And so the wider variety of people that I was able to talk to, I felt like the more it would, maybe reach somebody that needed it. And, through that process, like I also learned a lot about myself, and it just seemed like, reflecting back on it from when I started, it is definitely like a win-win all around for everyone, myself included. That's how I look at it. I don't feel like there was any point where any harm was being brought into the world or, channeled at all. It was just, discussing, ideas and experiences and looking forward, which I think is super important, because I feel like a lot of people, myself included, we tend to, if we haven't kind of worked through the things that we've been through, we tend to dwell on the past. So kind of shifting that perspective and focusing on the future and on the present moment and the future was very impactful.
To me, I resonate with what you were saying, because when I started this podcast, it was an act of wanting to pave another path for people who didn't know that there was another way. It was from a place of going through so many things in my life, and even at that time I was also battling addiction and substance abuse. So during that time period, I had like this idea, this calling, I guess you could say it like that. I didn't entirely know what I was doing, but I just knew I needed to do it. And there were so many like external factors that could have stopped me from doing this, but for some reason, like nothing else that I ever did lit a fire in my heart. It was all just creating and being an example. I love how honest you were about, at first it was kind of like, just to get eyes on you. but then like conversely, the more eyes you got, the more you were able to impact. And I totally agree with you on that, because when I started this whole thing, I started making YouTube videos, and I started, thinking like I just want to make these YouTube videos and, kind of see where this can go in terms of gaining, an audience. And it really hit me when, during my beginning stages where I wanted the eyes on me, I wanted people to see me, I wanted people to hear me. And so I was coming from a place of like trying to seek these things instead of just trying to add value, and it never worked out. I mean, beginning stages, you barely have any viewers, you barely have any listeners. How many years has it been for you and your podcast now, brother?
2019, late 2019.
Oh
So
wow, okay.
3.5 years.
Okay.
Though I haven't posted an episode since 2021. I've recorded
Okay.
a couple since then,
Okay.
but I haven't posted any. It's so funny because when we had connected and discussed doing this podcast, it was really like a sign for me to kind of figure out a way to get back into that space, because I really really enjoyed doing it. And like I said, like there's seasons in life, and just I wasn't in the right space to be able to devote the time and energy to continuing my podcast. But I feel like we're coming full circle. And life's a roller coaster, man. There's ups and there's downs. And
It definitely is. It definitely is. There was a point during the whole timeline, because I'm on like 3 years now with my YouTube channel, because that's how I started. And there were moments where I had to just take a break from making videos and just focusing on the hustle, making money, trying to survive. And with these seasons, man, it's beautiful, because like when you know that something needs to happen and you just surrender to that, that's where like real magic or miracles start happening. And so, it's a blessing to be able to share this space with you. And I wanted to highlight how we're kind of both in this community filled with conscious individuals, and we're able to kind of connect with people that don't really talk about the average thing, like like what shows do you watch, or like what I mean, like things that don't really matter to us, but they matter a whole lot to other people. And I wanted to kind of ask you how you got into contact with people in the conscious space, and like even how did you even cultivate your own consciousness?
Ooh, that's a good question. So as far as the the community aspect, what you were talking about, we're both in this amazing community, the Level Up Collective. And just it's so funny to think back on like how life evolves, the things that we've been through and how everything's connected. So one of my good friends, Jeremy, he's the founder of the Level Up Collective. And I've known him since high school, and we weren't ever like super close, but like friends, and we would just essentially like party together. I went like deep into the partying and the drugs, and when I got sober in 2017, I really was trying to figure out how I needed to structure my life in a way that would allow me to move past that and continue to move forward. And I had to essentially cut out like 99% of the people in my life. There was a period of time where like the only people that had my phone number were like my immediate family members and like 3 other people. I reached out to Jeremy after I got sober, because at the time he was a fitness coach, and I wanted to be healthy, at least raise my baseline of health. And so I worked with him for a little bit for fitness and nutrition. And then I actually had a phone call with him before I started my podcast, kind of asking him questions about, what would be the best way to navigate that, or just if he had any tips or advice on how to get that going. I've just been very fortunate in, the people that I've been able to surround myself with and associate with. Another person that I'm very close with, his name's Cody. Man, we met freshman year of high school. So, we've been thick as thieves for like 16 years. He and I were just always on a very similar wavelength. And he's actually, like, out of like the 60 something episodes that I did on my podcast, he's probably the guest on 20 of them. we just were able to talk about life in a way that's, very rare. So I would say those two people were a massive influence on allowing me to evolve as a person into being in a more conscious space. And then obviously when Jeremy founded the Level Up Collective, I joined immediately. And that's been such a beautiful container for connecting with like-minded individuals and, shining a light on the more difficult aspects of life, the things that, people don't necessarily want to look at. It's a beautiful thing to have people like that around you. To circle back to your original question, the people, and then like what kind of started my journey of, the conscious path and becoming more aware of myself and the way that, the universe works and how I interact within the universe. I think ever since I was a little kid, I felt like I was different. Like I was like the weird kid, when I was a child. And, my brothers are too, which is, it's funny. Like my brothers and I, like we're wildly different, but we have a lot of similarities. I just felt like for a very, very long time, I felt like I didn't belong anywhere. I felt like I was the black sheep of my family. I felt like this period of time when I was in middle school where I, essentially like didn't have any friends, and I just felt like an outcast, and it was a really difficult time. I was always, seeking attention and approval and validation, and I think that that's, at the very least it's part of the reason why I got into, drugs and alcohols, especially like selling drugs. Like, if you're selling drugs, like people want to be around you, even if they're not necessarily, the best people. Not that they're, everyone's got good and bad in them, but it was a way for me to kind of supplement that, the attention and the validation that I wanted. And so there was always something under the surface that was guiding me to where I needed to be. And I took a very roundabout way. I have this tendency to need to learn lessons the hard way before they kind of sink in, And so, there were some hard lessons learned over the years, but through that, it allowed me to understand myself at a much deeper level, because I had seen the darkness and I had essentially been the darkness, and to go through that and come out the other end gave me a unique view of the world. What came out of that is, what you mentioned, which is, the consciousness aspect and feeling more tapped into myself and to the world around me.
How would you define consciousness to those that are listening right now?
I mean, I would say in its simplest form, it would just be an awareness of the duality of life, the good and the bad, the light and the darkness, and how you fit into that. Those aspects are ever present in life and in yourself. A lot of people don't want to look at the darkness within themselves. And I think once you are able to do that, that is the catalyst for massive personal evolution.
I used to think like with spirituality, because I was just like you. I resonate with what you were saying with feeling like you didn't fit in with anybody, the black sheep of the family. I always felt like an outcast growing up, and part of it was because I was born in another country, When I moved here, I didn't know how to speak English, so didn't know how to communicate to people, so I always had this anxiety and this fear of talking to people. To me, I believe those were the earlier stages of my spiritual development, and it wasn't until I actually stumbled upon our community that I started learning more about consciousness. And consciousness is just such a beautiful complement to spirituality. It's such a beautiful way to just walk in this life because you know you're the one that has the power. It was never something that was taken away from you. And I used to believe that I was powerless. I used to believe that I had no control of my life because I grew up not knowing where life was going to take me. I had multiple experiences in which my life was almost taken from me. I grew up with parents that couldn't fully take care of me, so I had to stay in different homes during my school years. And so I never felt like I had a belonging or I had control of my life. I was just at the mercy of whatever life has for me. And now that I've grown up to who I am now, I realize now more than ever that it's all in our power, that it's all in our control. What drove you to want to be a part of something like this, especially a wealth mastermind?
Well, that's an interesting question, because when I joined, it was not a wealth mastermind. It evolved into that over time, but at the beginning, it was, my motivation was to have a community of like-minded people and learn as much as I could about living the most optimized life that I could. And that's, incorporates a lot of things, but, physical health, mental, emotional, spiritual health, diving into, the darker aspects of myself and, learning how to reframe my belief systems and kind of set myself up in the best way possible for the rest of my life, essentially. And to be surrounded by other people who want the same for themselves and for others. As this community evolved, it is what it is now, which is, it's a very multifaceted community, but a massive piece of that is wealth creation. And I like I said earlier, I have a tendency to learn things the hard way. So many times in my life where I've fallen into the shiny object trap, whatever's cool at the moment, or whatever I think is gonna get me the best results in the shortest period of time. And so I've dabbled in a lot of different things, and wealth creation and generating income. And another beautiful thing about the community that we're in is that it's very raw and there's no bullshit. So if you're you can share your wins and your losses in any aspect of life, and you get some raw, honest feedback, which is a beautiful thing. And so I've had a lot of experiences where it's like either just not calling you out on the shit you're doing wrong, or it's just kind of like yay, keep going, do whatever you want to do, which is great. That's a beautiful thing, like that we're in a position to be able to do whatever we want to do. But there's the other aspect of it where like you need those checks and balances from the relationships that you have. If you're in a position where you're surrounded by people that are just gonna always agree with you or always tell you what you want to hear, I don't think that's necessarily conducive to growth and evolution.
I joined much later than you, so I didn't get to see in its entirety the evolution, but I'm sure that it was probably transformational things for everyone in it. I've never thought that I'd ever join a mastermind, if I'm gonna be honest with you. I grew up in life wanting to be a bartender.
Let's go. Been there.
Oh, man, that party life is just something else. I didn't even party when I was younger, but as soon as I turned 21 and I started being a bartender, that's when I started getting into like being the life of the party, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
being around that environment to this environment, it's like two different worlds. Ah, man, I just want to give my flowers to Jeremy for really, cultivating this space, and even the rawness of what we're going through in life, because we know that not everything is going to be highs. There's definitely going to be some lows, and those are where the real lessons that are to be learned come from. Like, I'll put it into this example: basketball. When you win a game of basketball, you get that high of winning, and then it's like, okay, let's go play again. But if you're competitive and you lose, you take that way more seriously than if you had won. Because when you lose, you're like, dang, like, what did I do wrong? Like, all right, I gotta go fix this, I gotta go fix that. Ah, this is where I messed up. And then you start wanting to improve. So if you win, you're like, you don't really care too much. Let's move on to the next game. But then if you lose, you're more critical, you're more analytical about why you didn't win. And so when we take losses in life, when we make mistakes, when we're at a point in our life where we're just not where we want to be, that's where the real lessons are. Dude, it's so crazy seeing myself now, and I want to go even deeper in our experiences of really battling addiction, because I used to be the type to, like, right before work, like, I would be a little high, like I would take some shots in the bar, like behind the bar, you know what I mean, to like take the edge off.
Hmm.
What was your experience like dealing with addiction, to kind of just go right back to that?
So I remember the first time I smoked weed was the summer the summer after my sophomore year of high school, and I like poked some holes in a Diet Coke can and like sprinkled the weed on top and smoked it out of the soda can, you know. Um,
Oh man.
Through most of high school, I was like very like a well-behaved, good kid, and then second half of my senior year at high school, I just was like, I had some things happen while I was in high school, and so when I got to my senior year, I wanted an escape, essentially. You know, I had a family member murdered my sophomore year of high school, and then very shortly after that, my mom got diagnosed with cancer, and she's like healthy now. My mom's an angel. She's an amazing person. And but you know, at that time, I was just, it's a lot to handle for a teenager. My senior year of high school, I started like drinking a little more, and then I got into oxys, and I started doing cocaine, and then I started doing ecstasy, and it just was a wild downhill spiral from like 18 to, let's say, 17 years old until like 20, just before I turned 26. And it was, you know, like I mentioned earlier, like the selling drugs part was very much, let me get that attention and that validation, and like people want to be around me. But I was also like pretty shy, and so like drinking and doing drugs, like you said, kind of makes you want to be more of like the life of the party and more outgoing, and like let me act a certain way so that these people will like me, because like I felt like I never fit in. It just was this feedback loop of like, I do these things, like I knew that I was fucking up, but I also was getting what I felt I needed at the time, which was like I had all of these friends, you know, like quote unquote friends. Had all these people that I could call to hang out with. Like, let's, you know, let's get a bottle, like, let's get an 8 ball, let's, you know, smoke a blunt, like all whatever, you know. I had this constant influx of attention, and that's what I have been seeking for so long. And so, first of all, like, not sustainable. So, you know, I have burned a lot of bridges, screwed people over, I've stolen from people, I've, you know, stolen from my family, and like that was the dark night of the soul, like the big one that, you know. And it's been, you know, long enough now where I feel like that was an entirely different life. Like part of it doesn't even seem real to me. Thinking back on like the things that I've done or kind of the way that I used to act in the world, it's a trip, dude, to think about that kind of stuff because, there's this debate about addiction, about like what causes it. And, by far the most popular route to go in sobriety is to do like the 12-step program for Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't resonate with that at the time. I've been to 2 inpatient rehab programs and I didn't do the 12 steps either time that I went. And I had this aversion to the God aspect of it. So I went to Catholic school for like essentially my entire childhood and like church every Sunday, but I didn't like really believe. It was just like this is what you do. You go to Catholic school, you go to church, you go I was just kind of going through the motions. By the time I was heavy into the addiction, like I was like, essentially my belief was like God is not real, like there's nothing out there. And so to essentially surrender to this program of giving myself over to a higher power, I was like, I'm not doing that. Like there isn't one. What I figured out over the years is, for one, like I've come to believe that there is a guiding force. Some of the experiences that I've had in life, like there's no way that things turned out the way that they did without some kind of, so you could say, divine intervention. But another thing that I've figured out over the years is that you can go through life like white knuckling it and like just going to meetings all the time, like AA meetings or NA meetings, and just like living that path. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that path. I think that there's, we were talking about community earlier, like the Alcoholics Anonymous community. That's like a very like strong, tight-knit community of people who like genuinely want to remain sober. But in my experience, when I go to these meetings, I haven't been to one in a long time, but it's a lot of reflecting on the things that you've done in the past, where you're at now, with very, very little focus on where you want to go. It's more like, let's just get through today, like, one day at a time, one day at a time, one day at a time. And I wanted more than that. What I've come to realize is like a big piece of, I guess a countering force to addiction is purpose and fulfillment. Because if you have something that you want more than you want to escape, then you won't escape. I don't know if that makes sense, but
no, it definitely does, dude. It definitely does. Like, to this day, like, I've still been battling marijuana addiction, and now that I'm like in this position where I have to show up to, like, my higher self needs to show up, like I can't be messing around. That desire for my higher self and my best self to show up beats my addiction to want to smoke some weed. So that sense of purpose completely takes over. And it's funny how you mentioned that, because I was literally just talking to my girlfriend about this. Addiction is a crazy thing, man. And I don't even know how it started for me. Was, to be honest, like in middle school. I started smoking weed in middle school, back when like you bought them in like dime bags and nickel bags, and you bought it from some sketchy ass dude that you don't know if you were getting oregano. Like, you know what I mean? I don't know. Weed back then was a lot crazier. I don't think it's like, I think it's very different now. And it's kind of sad to see, because it's so commercialized. Back then you had to like, you had to really be in the know to get some. You had to be in the know to get some dro. And now it's like, dude, you can have like a pen that can get you absolutely high, but it's like some super potent shit.
So you could just buy it at the store.
Yeah. And it's so sad to see because I see so many individuals, and I don't hate on anybody, like, live your life, but at the same time, like, I know the consequences because I've been there, and it's just sad to see how there are a lot of people that are falling victim to addiction path, especially you take into consideration like vaping and all these different things that are not good for us, but they're so easy, they're like so readily available to everybody. I think we dodged a bullet. Like, I really do think that we did. And I'm not saying that our experiences of like having gone through addiction, like, or your experiences of anything that you've gone through was good, but it definitely moved you in the direction. That guiding force definitely had this path for you. I can only imagine to have done ecstasy, cocaine, like all these like super potent drugs, and then still being able to, I guess, like beat it, like being able to beat it and be here and be a voice for people that are going through it. Like, to me, it seems a lot like your purpose definitely took hold and just like rattled whatever you were dealing with out of you. I had gotten offered cocaine like maybe 3 times in my life. I never once took it, but I can see what it does to people. And even ecstasy. Ecstasy, I think, is a big one, especially like I went to like one rave, and a lot of people are like just taking that shit like candy. Like,
Yeah, man.
so I can only imagine the high that you feel in that moment, and then to come back down to reality, because I see it in people's eyes afterwards, like after the parties, and they're just like completely like zombified.
That's the perfect opportunity to just take more.
Yeah,
And then you
dude.
don't, that's where that's a key part of that cycle is
Yeah.
like, not only do you feel amazing while you're doing it, but once you stop, you're like back below baseline.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're below where you were before you took it. And then you feel like absolute shit. And like you could just take some more and like not feel like that.
Mm. Mm.
And that's that'll get you, you know?
You had your sights set on something much further, and I wanted to ask you, like, what did you have your eyes set on during that time period? Because you had that awareness. So what did you set your sights on?
Well, just in like full transparency, like I've been to hundreds of AA meetings, and they served a massive purpose at the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
where I needed kind of that daily or multiple time a week reminders to like keep me on track. Like
Mm-hmm.
they definitely played a role in kind of, you know they were like a buffer, kind of keeping me away from what I didn't want to go back to. I didn't really know what I wanted as far as like in the future when I first got sober, because I had spent like almost a decade with like no plans at all for the future. Like I didn't think about that really ever. It was just like, what am I doing tomorrow? Like, let's get fucked up. Like, what are we doing? And so once I stopped, it was like, okay, I don't really know. Like, I have no idea what I want to do. I needed I needed something. Like I needed to do something because I was like living at my mom's house. I didn't have a car. I didn't have a driver's license. I needed some form of structure. And so I got a job. I started working at Costco, and then I got another job when I was working 2 jobs. November of 2017. So I was like 7 months sober. I got arrested for the official charges aiding and abetting the transportation of illegal aliens for financial gain.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man? Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
What?
Yeah. So
that's for sure gonna be the intro. No, I'm just playing.
yeah, bro, it was a wild story. Like, I was sober at this point, right? Like, I was
Yo, I'm sorry, continue, bro.
No, you're good. Like, I was sober. I was like 7 months sober, and I was like, I was working at Costco. And this was before I got the second job. But one of my coworkers was like sending me Snapchats with like thousands of dollars. And I was 26 at the time, and he was like 20. And we both worked at Costco. I was like, bro, how are you getting this money? Like, I know you're not making it here, because like we make the same money and I work more hours than you. So like, and I like asked him, I said, does it have anything to do with drugs? And he said no. And I was like, cool, like, can I get in on it? And one of my best friends had recently moved from San Diego to North Carolina. And I was like, damn, like, I kind of want to change. Like, maybe I'll move out to North Carolina. I'm gonna need some money to do that though. And I don't have like, this might be a good jump start. And so it was basically like drive from San Diego to El Centro, which is like close to the border of Arizona. Pick some illegal immigrants up and drive them to LA and get $5,000. You don't have to cross any state lines. You don't have to cross any borders. And I was like, sign me up. And so I was at work one day, and I asked my mom, I was using her car, and I had just got my license back like the month before, because I had gotten a DUI previously, and like didn't do my DUI classes, and like had a warrant out for my arrest, and like there was this whole thing, and my license was suspended for like quite a while, and I had just gotten it back. And I asked my mom, I was like, hey mom, can I use your car to go hang out with a friend after work? She was like, yeah, sure. And so I go pick up my coworker. He's in the passenger seat, I'm in the front seat, and we drive, out to El Centro, and waited till it got dark, and then picked up this family, like on the side of the freeway. Like, we like pulled up in the emergency lane, and this family of like 6 people, like little kids, jumped into the back of my mom's car. And my luck, first time I ever did it, get caught. And Border Patrol had an investigation going, apparently. So like, they watched these people cross the border. They watched me pull up on the wrong side of the freeway and then get off the next exit and pull around and pull back onto the correct side of the freeway. And then they followed me almost all the way back to San Diego in unmarked vehicles, and then like boxed me in and pulled me off to the side of the road. And so I spent a few days in jail in El Centro. I remember calling my mom from the Border Patrol station. It was like 4:00 in the morning, and I left her a message, and I was like, I just got arrested. Like, I'm sober. I don't know if that makes any difference, but like, just so you know. And so the next day, this was a Sunday, the day that I got arrested. And so the next day was Monday, and I was like to go in front of the judge, and my mom drove out there, and she was sitting in the courtroom, and I walk into the courtroom in an orange jumpsuit and shackles, because I had been arrested for a federal felony offense. I was in jail for like 3.5 days. I got out the day before Thanksgiving. Like, when I got out on a Wednesday, it was the day before Thanksgiving. Shout out to my mom. They let me out on a signature bond, which is essentially if a financially responsible related adult with no criminal record can sign for you, their signature like will allow you to be released. And if you don't do what you have to do after you get released, then that person is on the hook for like 30 grand in penalties. So my mom signed because she's a financially responsible related adult with no criminal record. Shout out, mom. So I got out, and I was on pretrial release, and then I was on probation. Throughout that whole process, it was like November of 2017 until March of 2019, so like almost a year and a half. I had to call every day Monday through Friday to see if I had to take a drug test. That was like the terms of my probation, because I had had a DUI for driving under the influence of a controlled substance, and I had also had a drug possession charge. And so that was the terms of my probation, is I had to, call every day to see if I had to take a drug test, which was like a massive win for like keeping me sober. But it was wild, dude. Like the US Marshals came and inspected my mom's house to make sure it was a suitable living environment. Like it was this whole thing that really added the structure that I needed at the time. I didn't really have any inclination to like relapse. I didn't want to like drink or do drugs, but that was like, I couldn't. Like if I if I do, like I'm going to jail, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and I couldn't, like I didn't really have the wherewithal to like think about what I wanted. It was more so like, let me just get to the end of probation and not fuck up. Right before my probation ended, I met my ex and we started dating. At that time, like my plan kind of was like, I'm either gonna work my way up at Costco, or I'm gonna be like work my way up and become like a restaurant manager, and then like maybe open my own restaurant one day. That was like kind of the goal. I was working like 2 full-time jobs, just saving up as much money as I could. I bought a new car. I wanted like the normal things that people want, just like financial stability, and like I wanted like my baselines covered, and then I could figure out what else I wanted. The end of 2019, I quit Costco. I had been there for like 2.5 years. I quit Costco and I got promoted to manager at the restaurant that I was bartending at. I did that for like a couple months, and then like moved in, restaurants closed. I was out of a job. What's the crazy timing is that like January of 2020 is when the Level Up Collective started. So I had just joined the Level Up Collective. I had just started my podcast, and then I lost my job. And so that was really like got me thinking like, okay, what do you want to do in life? Like what are we doing here? Like what more is there? There has to be more, and I knew like there's no way that I'm working a job for like 30 years just to like retire. Like I'm not doing that. I went to college for a little bit, like right out of high school. I did like 3 semesters, but like wasn't doing that either. And so it was, I would say like that was really when I started considering the possibility that there was more than just working. Since that time, it's been pretty tumultuous. I'm thankful for all these experiences, because while I'm not necessarily like, obviously I would like to have more and be more than what my current circumstances show. I'm also grateful for the experiences that got me to where I'm at, because I feel like my toolkit is stacked, and I'm able to like much more effectively maneuver in the world. That was a long rant.
You were living in the wild fucking West, bro.
Bro.
No cap. I would have never known. And thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, man.
You have a whole host of experiences. I like to think of these things as like seeds of experience that you plant into the dirt. If you nurture it, and if you take care of it, and if you hold yourself accountable, they can grow into a tree that can be ripe with fruits for you. And you planted a whole fucking garden, bro. You never really know, to be honest. You never really know with people, and that's why I love just the whole idea of having a platform to be able to have people come on board and talk about their journey, their comeback journey. Was there any point in your life, was this the point in your life where you still didn't believe in God, or were you starting to kind of find your relationship with God? Or can you tell me more in regards to like how you came across that higher power?
So at that point, I was like, that wasn't even on my mind at all. But that was one of the experiences where I looked back and I was like, that's like the higher power, the, you know, God or the universe, like whatever word somebody wants to describe that. But it's like when that happened, when I got arrested, I remember two things that the one of the border patrol agents said, and one of them was like, why are you trying to smuggle illegal immigrants when the president wants to build a wall? And I was like, I don't know what that has to do with anything, but like, okay. The second thing that he said though was like, you're looking at 16 to 24 months in federal prison. And I was like, I'm not built for prison. There's no way, like, there's no way, you know? And I spent 3 days in jail. And other than that, the only consequence was I was on probation. That's it. I didn't have to pay any fines. I didn't, like, there was nothing. There's no consequences. I was just on probation for a year and that was it. And I was like, I guess I had started to like tap into spirituality a little bit in like 2019. My ex had kind of got me into like the journaling and meditation game. And that was, I had never really, like, maybe I had journaled a little bit, but like never really took it seriously. And so that was a big catalyst for helping me like tap in on a deeper level. Another big catalyst was talking to people on my podcast and kind of hearing their experiences, and that fueled it a little more. And then joining the Level Up Collective, that fueled it even more. And then once I was in a space where I felt like I was like elevated enough on a personal level, I guess like in a vibrational sense, like I was able to like expand and like have a zoomed out view of like my life. And I was like, okay, like there's no way that that there was not something out there like keeping me, like there, it felt like there was something that was giving me chances to like get my shit together. You know, I'd veer off the path a little bit and it would kind of bump me back on the path, you know. And I think that's where the free will of humans comes in, right? Because maybe there is fate or like a preordained path that people are meant to be on, but that doesn't mean they necessarily follow that, because we have free will. We can make decisions, we can veer off the path, we could take a different path. But it felt like there was like almost like bumpers when you're bowling, and like the ball starts to go to the side and the bumpers kind of knock it back onto the lane. Like that's like, I feel like I was the bowling ball. Yeah, I would say the spirituality aspect really, it started to take hold, I would say, in 2019, and just kind of evolved from there.
How has the evolution been like from 2019 to now?
I would say it's been slow and gradual. Like, I don't want to say I was like forced into religion as a child, but it was like just the way like my grandparents were Catholic, and so like my mom was Catholic, and so like we were raised Catholic. It's just the way that it was, you know. So like I didn't know anything different. Catholic school, church, all that. And then I, you know, went hard the other way where I was like, I don't believe in anything. Bringing all that full circle has been a slow, gradual process of like allowing myself to, for one, believe, and two, tap into that. It's been a little bit of a struggle, because one could argue that like the free will aspect negates, you know, has the potential to like negate a higher power, because we can basically do whatever we want. So who's to say that there is a, you know, a path that we're supposed to be on? So that's, you know, where my mind would go, be like, no, like I have the power, I'm in control. And that mentality is what kept me in like this rigid, focused mentality when I got sober, because I was like, I'm not going to give myself to a higher power. Like I'm in control. Like I am able to overcome this on my own. And I did that. But did I though? Or like, what, you know, was there a higher power like guiding me, you know? And so it's been a gradual process of integrating that more into my life, because I'm no longer at a point where I believe that there's nothing, because there's like just like my life, my experiences have shown me that like that's just not the case. But my relationship with, you know, higher power, God, the universe, regularly at the forefront of my mind. And so that's the gradual process, I think, of like going from like I don't believe anything to like I'm tapped in all the time. I'm just slowly moving up that. It's like I'm riding like a really slow escalator, just like little by little moving up. I feel very grateful for the experiences that I've had that have allowed me to get to this place, and for the outcome of those experiences to have led me down a path of seeking a deeper understanding of, you know, both consciousness and spirituality, because you had said earlier they, you know, they work together, you know, they complement each other. And I feel like for me, like the consciousness aspect came first, and the spirituality aspect is slowly starting to get intermingled with that. I'm very grateful, and I'm very excited for what's to come.
That's beautiful. I love how you mentioned that consciousness came first. I definitely believe my spirituality came first and it led me to consciousness. So I'm kind of wondering, like, that self-awareness that comes with consciousness. Well, here, let me ask you this. What made you start even wanting to integrate it more into your life?
I mean, to be honest, like, because other people I knew had been integrating it into their lives. And like, I think that was also like the, you know, the underlying, I want to fit in. But what's cool about that is like, you know, we could talk about how patterns, you know, toxic patterns of like seeking validation or seeking attention, like, sure, they could have a negative aspect, you know, they could have a negative effect on your life. But the other end of that is like, what if you're seeking the validation of attention of people who are the most genuine, loving, authentic people that you've ever been around? And so you want to emulate that, you want to fit in with them. That was kind of the route that I took, because I had, you know, I had a few friends that were, they were tapped in on that spiritual level, and I wanted to be around them, and I wanted to have a circle of people around me that I could connect with, like on a very deep level, like those very meaningful relationships. And that just happened to be one of the things that all of them had in common. And so I was like, all right, well, how do I, you know, let me revert back to my acceptance and validation. And like, maybe that's not the best way to go through life, but, you know, there's the, you know, I guess the not most beneficial side of like, let me fit in and I'm going to get the attention from like the drug addicts and the drug dealers. And on the other end of that is like, let me try and fit in with the people who want more out of their life. What are they doing? I'm going to do that. Even if I don't fully believe in it, like I'm going to incorporate that into my life. And so I think that was kind of like
it's beautiful, because we're kind of like a product of our environment. And you used to be in an environment where, you know, you were surrounded by, you know, people that weren't going to add value to your life, and now you are. So you've kind of slowly, gradually becoming your environment.
That's a really good point. Yeah, man, environment is key. It's you know, that wildly overused phrase of you are the average of the people you surround yourself with, but it's so true.
It is
so true.
Now that you're in this stage of your life, what are your plans moving forward?
So it could be like a strength and a weakness depending on what way you look at it, but I I like to do a lot of different things. It's really cool because I try different things. I experiment. I like to have new experiences. But the flip side of that is that sometimes I struggle with like consistency, like devoting myself to something for an extended period of time. And so where I'm at now and what I'd like, moving forward, what I'm working towards is, over the last few years, I've spent a good amount of time learning, like investing and trading. I feel like I'm at a point now where I've strengthened that skill set to a point where I'm able to, like, I feel like I know what I'm doing now. Not to say that I wouldn't quite say that I'm an expert. I understand it enough to where I feel like I can consistently see wins in that area of life. I want to get into real estate investment. We'll be revamping the Comeback Journey podcast. There's going to be some, call it like a relaunch of it. There's going to be some things going along with that I'm pretty excited about. And I want to thank you because this is the first podcast that I've done in a long time. It really, brought light to the fact that that's something that I want to continue to do. So very grateful for this opportunity and for being on your podcast. But yeah, man, it's as far as like goals for like what I want in the future to kind of set myself up, bringing it back to, wealth creation. And there's a few things that I'd like to get in. At the forefront of that is the real estate aspect. I think that, that's been floating around in my awareness for multiple years. That's something that I'm definitely gonna pursue. I thoroughly enjoy the investing and trading. Like that's fun for me, which is incredible because it's like have fun and make money. That's cool. Starting the podcast, like when I started it initially, like I didn't have any plans of making money off it. I just wanted to start a podcast, and so I don't, like, who knows if that's gonna evolve into something that could be a potential revenue stream, but like it's definitely something that I just also really enjoy doing. And I think that I've been lacking things that I enjoy doing in my life more recently, and so I'm excited to incorporate a little more commitment and consistency to the things that I do, and also incorporate a little more playfulness into the things that I do. And I think that that's going to be a game changer.
Super stoked for your growth, Nick.
Thanks, man.
Absolutely, brother. You have a voice, man. You have a voice, you have a story. So use it. Use it. Use it.
Let's go. I'm stoked for you too, bro. This is like you said, you've been making YouTube videos for like 3 years and devoting yourself to the aspect of life that I feel like is overlooked largely, which is just like adding value to people's lives in whatever way you can, whatever way your unique experiences and gifts allow you to. This is one of those for you, bro. And I'm very grateful to, have connected with you, and grateful that, you've allowed me to come on here and speak. And, we have this incredible conversation. And, even the first conversation that we had, I was like, we're like we're vibing, like, so yeah, man, it's a beautiful thing.
I'll be honest, this was the first podcast for me in which I just feel like myself, like you hearing your experiences, you really brought my inner child out. And
love it.
Yeah, and it's beautiful, man. You again, I want to say thank you for coming on here, blessing us with your experiences, being vulnerable, which is not easy. And I'm celebrating for what's to come in your life. So with that being said, Nick, is there any final remarks that you want to say before we kind of wrap it up?
I think if there's a final remark or message to send out, that's really been a vital piece in my life recently, and I imagine it will be moving forward, is just remembering that finding your light, whatever that is on the other side of the things that you don't want to face. And there's this quote that I love that quote is, that which you most need to find will be found where you least want to look. And so being able to dive into those aspects of yourself that you don't necessarily like, or you don't want to look at, or these parts of your life that you've been neglecting, if you confront them, if you face them and shine a light on them, in my experience, your life gets a whole lot better.
Nick Lowry, guys. I'm gonna link Nick's Instagram down below, as well as his podcast. You guys can check him out. We thank you guys for tuning in to this episode. We pray that you guys got some value out of Nick's vulnerable experiences, and that we were able to shed some light on the darker aspects of life that doesn't really get paid much attention to, but in Nick's words, it can definitely change your life for the better. So with that being said, guys, I pray that you all have a blessed rest of your morning, your day, and your night, whatever time it may be for you guys. I love you all, and I will see you guys in the next episode. Peace.